Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, May 30th, 2025, and today we're going to talk some hard truths about deep compost mulching / no-dig systems, some hard truths about hard work, and some hard truths about this week's topics because it's Feedback Friday. So let's do it. All right, lovely Friday to you all. I hope everyone is doing well. I had a nice day of work myself yesterday, sowed some sweet corn. I will also be transplanting some popcorn in 2 weeks into some cover cropped areas. But with the sweet corn, since we shrank our production a bit, I actually have more room to grow sweet corn than I normally would because I've got the space. And I've also got a near constant craving for sweet corn in the winter. So maybe I made a point to do it. I usually just shuck the sweet corn when it's done and freeze it and then, just chip some off throughout the winter and throw it in basically everything from pasta to rice dishes to cornbread. Pretty much whatever I can find all winter. It is delicious. We do sell some of the sweet corn, but like watermelons, for instance, this is a neighbor and loyal customer thanking crop to me. I mean, we don't make basically any money on it, but we make a lot of folks happy, which is of equal importance to us. Anyway, it is Friday, which means Feedback Friday, where we explore what you all were saying about this week's topics. On Monday, we talked about planting into cover crop mulches, about my story moving from the city to a farm, and thirst waves. I don't know what sparked this particular comment, but I liked it, from Dwight Yoder 4883, who wrote, quote, "Lucky enough to grow up on a farm in Indiana in the 60s. As a child, I so badly wanted to eat the processed garbage that the town kids were eating," end quote. Thanks. And I feel like parenting and raising kids around farming has been somewhat of an unintended overarching sort of theme this week, but I liked this because Hannah and I think about this sort of notion all the time. Abstinence breeds desire, and desire leads to overindulgence. What I mean is that when you restrict something entirely from people, and especially kids, they just want it more. It's a losing battle. And so when they finally get it, they overdo it. Like alcohol is a good example of this. I have an Italian friend who grew up having, sips of wine at the table with her family. When she came to America, however, she was floored by how the kids were drinking. They had never been exposed to proper habits and or customs around drinking. And so when they finally got their hands on it without parents to teach them how to appreciate it and respect the dangers, enter keg stands. But the same thing could be said of video games or all sorts of things. So not exactly what Dwight was referring to there, but that's where my brain went. Also, more to the topics, at Farmer Cheryl wrote, quote, "Great summaries. So planting into terminated cover crop residue works best with transplants, not seeds. Would you ever use the paper pot transplanter to plant into cover crop mulch, or do you just transplant by hand?" End quote. And the answer is no, the paper pot transplanter would probably not be great in this situation. We do it mostly by hand. The paper pot is a tool that basically transplants baby plant starts from special trays really quickly. The special trays are made of paper, hence paper pots, and it lays each paper cell down in a nice, neat, evenly spaced row. But the paper pot transplanter requires perfect soil tilt to be effective. And cover crop mulch is kind of the opposite of that. Maybe a pea cover crop that is winter killed. You could rake it aside and lightly till the top few inches with like a tilther, but into a mulch would be a strict kind of no-go, I would think. On Tuesday, we talked about Mache as a winter cover crop / winter crop, and at Robert Jarvis 984 wrote, quote, "When you mentioned Mache, it reminded me of a question I've been wanting to ask any experienced gardener. Do you, or anyone in the comments section for that matter, grow Purslane as an edible mulching crop? Provides great ground cover during the growing season and is incredibly nutritious. Thanks for all the content / info, by the way." End quote. Well, thank you. And the answer is no, not as a ground cover, but yes, actually, we have grown it as a crop. You can buy cultivated purslane seed for that purpose. Purslane is, if the listener is not aware, an obnoxious weed to some, but it is also an incredibly delicious plant. And I remember when my wife was pregnant and shortly thereafter, how much she loved purslane, and we would have it in salads a lot. It's delicious. Chefs may be into it. You just, don't want to let it go to seed, like at all. If you can't keep that thing in check, it will terrorize your summers. On Wednesday, I proposed Farm FC, my mix of farming and youth soccer camp idea to get kids involved in food alongside sports, and there were several good comments there from people with similar ideas. At JodaPie918 said they mix biking, frisbee, and farming. Very cool. At Later Days 4080 suggested putting a mini half pipe in an unused high tunnel during the winter to mix skateboarding and farming. As a longtime skater myself, that one was definitely up my alley there, like Woodward, but with a farming twist. At Matt Woodworth 6892 wrote, quote, "This is the idea around my rugby football club farm, chipping away for 15 years, close to all coming together. The farm has started at an at-risk facility in upstate New York. They had 650 acres of unused farmland we have been given control of. We have 2 hoop houses and 3 greenhouses. The farm has been built based on agriculture, animal husbandry, nutrition, and community interaction. The last step will be adding the sheep for rotational grazing on the pitches," which I love that idea. I've thought about having, like chickens fertilize the pitches at the, at my farm FC, right? I could run chickens in the winter. Anyway, they go on, "I'm rugby crazy, but hope to see soccer and lacrosse also part of the program. The ultimate goal would be to pass on the model to all clubs in the state so they could scale it to the club. This would set up hubs and allow kids to bring back what they learned and participate in their communities after discharging them from our care. A man can dream," end quote. Love that. At Laura Lynn wrote, quote, "Oh my gosh, yes, I've been talking my husband's ear off about how I'd love to start a kind of gardening summer camp for kids. I'm in on this idea. It's fantastic. We all need to eat every day, multiple times a day. Why aren't we teaching our kids skills like growing vegetables, raising animals, preparing these fresh whole foods? At the very least, teaching them where food comes from and the work that goes into it. And all the food produced by the school could be used within the school lunch system or donated to the community to those who may be in need," end quote. Yeah, I mean, for me, food and farming and ecology need to be the center of everything. Like everything. To me, you can teach pretty much anything from math to biology to even poetry through farming. The more we decline to do that, the more people will think of the environment and themselves as separate. Separate, they are definitely not. We are all made of carbon that was once turned to glucose by plants. The grass that fed the beef, the plant that grew the tomato slice, the leaves of lettuce, the seed for the mustard, the wheat for the bun. You are sunlight. Then on Thursday, we talked about if wood chips can be contaminated. And one contamination I didn't mention is what at ThisBeMeTube wrote, quote, "The only contamination issue I've encountered with wood chips is pieces of trash, little bits of styrofoam cups, sometimes chips of colored plastic or occasional cigarette butts," end quote. Yes, this is definitely a thing. The chippers will sometimes throw their waste in the wood chips. Super annoying, but a small price to pay, I suppose, for a free carbon source that is so great. Anyway, good stuff all week as always, friends. Keep it up. Otherwise, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, no dice with no dig. We'll see. BRB. I don't know if you can hear this, but we in Kentucky are in the middle of a giant cicada brood called the bourbon brood. It's like a 17-year cicada brood. And just listen to this for a second. And they are absolutely everywhere. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Ring of Fire. What if you could turn your brush problem into black gold? The Ring of Fire Biochar Kiln is your spring tool for soil transformation, converting woody debris into high-quality biochar in just hours. Biochar will kickstart your compost, retain water and nutrients in your soil, and provide habitat for beneficial microbes. Now $19.95 with flat rate shipping. Their spring sale runs through June. Don't wait to boost your soil and optimize your inputs. Visit ringoffire.earth/growers now to learn more. Also, for more information on biochar, check out the No-Till Market Garden podcast interview with Kelpie Wilson, inventor of the Ring of Fire kiln, that we will link in the show notes. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTIL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Jason Young, who asked last month, quote, "Hi, Jesse. I'm starting with setting up a shallow compost mulch, 2 to 3 inches of compost. with wood chip pathways. I'm doing this in southwest Missouri over pretty heavy soil. Through April, we received over 13 inches of rain with 2 to 3 more inches expected in the first week of May. I'm having a heck of a time with runoff, taking my compost and wood chips away to the lower end of my garden. My question is, in dealing with these big rains on completely saturated soils, how can I keep everything I'm working and paying for from floating away? This is disheartening, and I've spread just over 3 yards of compost and a yard of wood chips, and much of it is now displaced. Any ideas would be great, end quote. All right, thanks for this question here, Jason, and obviously big bummer to hear about that situation. So unfortunately, I'm not going to have a lot to offer that's going to be super uplifting here, but I promise that not all hope is lost. First, the system you are trying to use there is annoyingly always going to be difficult given your context, especially if you did not start out with managing the drainage for that area, which happens. I've done it in several areas on this farm. For those of us in high rainfall regions, though, with heavy soils like you, but also like myself, we have to be exceedingly thoughtful about water management in the beginning of our gardens. It's a lesson that I, like you, learned the hard way. Unlike many of the no-dig or deep compost mulch practitioners, our rainfall totals, especially this year for both of us, it's pouring outside right now, and we started the day at like almost 33 inches of rain. And again, it isn't even June. That sort of stuff makes this job and these sorts of compost mulching systems, be they deep or shallow, exceedingly complicated. Sounds like you and I are both on soils that will swell with water, and then once they are full, the water will start to puddle on the surface, and water is always going to travel downhill. So if your garden has any amount of slope to it, the water will find a way to the lowest spot, and anything that is loose and in the way, i.e. compost and or wood chips, will come along with it. And to be sure, we have already had more rain in our region. Like I said, roughly 33 inches. That's more than many of the English and European practitioners of no-dig systems get in an entire year, which would be closer to like 20 to 40 inches to generalize. And we have another 6 months to go. So assuming you cannot easily go back in time and prep the soil for better drainage, installing drain tiles, leveling, all that stuff, I still want to be helpful to you. So here is what I would say. For starters, going forward, you will just have to be more conscious of how you are going to keep the soil and compost in place. The wood chips, for their part, are going to be a constant battle though. And I would probably honestly abandon them for the pathways unless you are able to substantially alter the drainage. Abandon them for what? Well, on the slope, that is tough. I use living pathways to help shed water and reduce runoff to keep the pathways from eroding, but living pathways are definitely not the answer for everybody and not without their complications. I just want to fully emphasize that. Listeners, please never just run off and start letting stuff grow in your pathways. It's complicated and it takes a lot of research and experience to do well. Bare pathways may be the better option, at least to start, especially if your slope is not too bad. And I'm only assuming some amount of slope because you mentioned the low end of your garden, or at least they may be a simpler place to start. The wood chips, if you have access to loads of them, I would just reserve them for composting or to allow them to break down a little bit more and mulch over top of like longer season crops or perennials or whatever. Now, if you had access to good organic or unsprayed straw, you could use that in the pathways. That definitely will not go away as badly. And if you can mulch your paths, it's definitely worth it. It's hard when the mulch just washes out. As for general maintenance of the compost on the surface, the mulch, make sure the beds are covered if they are not planted. Covered with mulch, covered with tarps, covered with whatever makes sense for you. Plant as densely as you can to get as many roots hanging out in that compost as possible, keeping it together. Do what you can to direct the water away as well, to identify your problem areas and create pathways for the water to escape. Consider adding drainage around the garden or potentially in the garden where it makes sense. Maybe that's drain tile, but maybe it's just a trench or a French drain to divert the water from gaining speed. Work a lot on decompacting the soil too, so that the water will penetrate deeper, so that that might be broad forking, but also things like cover cropping. The annoying thing about farming and gardening is there really just is no plug and play system for everyone. The only thing all farms have in common is that we all have our own contexts, our own environmental conditions, our own pests, diseases, humidity levels, materials, and so on. This is partially why when I was talking about the Farm FC idea the other day, I think it's so important to start teaching kids early how to interact with, understand, and manage soil. These contextual considerations are a lot easier to wrap our brains around if we start at an early age. Anyway, I hope the rain chills a bit for you and myself over the next few months while also still coming down in reasonable amounts. Thanks. And I hope I was helpful. So we'll take one last break for this Friday. And when we come back, doing the work. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand.
Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20-plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Precip. Precip is billed as the easiest way to keep track of rainfall, and that is true, but it is a lot more than that. Sure, you can open the app and immediately see accurate rainfall totals, but you can also save locations to see historical rainfall totals, wind speeds, and all sorts of other nerdy details. Their radar-based technology means you can ditch the rain gauge. I usually have to do that anyway because the kids find a way to smash it with a baseball bat. You can ditch the rain gauge and start tracking rain and other growing conditions all on your phone. Click the link in the show notes to find out more. All right, back to the show. So a couple decades ago now, I was at this party in New York City, and this young couple found out that I was a writer and wanted to tell me about their idea for a novel, as long as I promised not to tell anyone. And I'm not going to break that promise because I frankly can't remember anything about their novel idea. I probably couldn't remember anything about it even the next day. But I do remember that after they told me about it, they proposed that maybe I could write the novel, and then we could like split the profits. You see, they explained they weren't writers, but they thought since I was a writer that I could do that. They, in this scenario, were the idea people. I was going to be the artist. And bless their hearts, they were extremely earnest about this proposal and very nice. However, I've been thinking about this couple a lot recently with the increase in access to and power of, frankly, generative AI technology, because here is the thing. Anyone and everyone can and does have ideas. Frankly, most people are idea people, quote unquote. But the difference between, say, Hemingway and Fitzgerald versus almost every other artist in the tabacs of Paris in the 1920s wasn't a lack of ideas. It's that Hemingway and Fitzgerald did the work. Certainly, coming up with ideas is easier for some than others, and it's a skill in itself that has to be developed and nurtured. But ideas are still very much the easy part of creating something, right? Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, right? I think 1% is giving it a lot of credit. Now, however, with tools like generative AI, no one has to spend their life learning to draw or learning to write or learning to play music or to create those things. You can have an idea for a song and you have a song. You can have an idea for a video and you have that video, or an idea for a novel and you have that novel. Sometimes it takes like a few seconds. But we lose more than just knowledge and skills when we are given the ability to bring any old idea into fruition. We lose experience, the study and the failure and the successes and just the never-ending challenge. And with fear and acceptance of sounding like a grumpy old man about it, I worry about a world where increasingly ideas are so easily rewarded and brought to life. Without experience, we have nothing but the product to pass along. I'm going to repeat that. Our experience, not our results, is what is guaranteed to retain its value. It's value for our communities, it's value for our kids, it's value for their kids, etc. I see this in farming sometimes too. New wealthy landowners hoping to have farmers come onto their land and build their farm for them in exchange for a share of the profits or whatever. They don't want a collaboration, but more or less like a ghost writer, a ghost farmer. And it doesn't really serve anyone to do this. For all aspects of life, but in particular farming and art, I fear people are increasingly looking to skip the work in pursuit of the results when the answers and rewards are all too often in the work itself. It's in the reading the books, it's listening to the podcast, growing the garden, raising the animals, studying business management, just working, even when you don't necessarily feel like it. I think about it a lot with the show, that I could easily just tap chat GPT to help write every episode and every ridiculous story at the end, but easy is not the point. The point is the work, and the work is the value. Value for you, hopefully, but also the value for me and my family. I get better as a farmer by studying and doing the work. I get better as an educator. I develop a skill that I can share with my children. Is what I produce always good? No, hardly. No artist can boast that. I mean, maybe Prince, but no other artist. But every artist can boast that they learned something from the bad, but you have to get through the bad to learn it. So anyway, if I have a goal in talking about this, it's just to say, in this world where practically any idea can be turned into anything, no one can actually write your novel or build your farm, because it isn't the novel that, when it all shakes out, you are actually after. It's not the destination, it's the journey, as they say. And by they, I mean the posters misattributing that quote to Emerson. I think now, more than ever, the work, the journey, needs to be what we admire and strive for. We don't need anyone to write our novels or build our farms for us. We'd miss out on all the fun that way, or the magic, as our dear fictional friend Typin Palmer put it. All right, let me know your thoughts on that or whatever else your thoughts may be on. Otherwise, au revoir, vendredi. It's been real. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a 501c3 nonprofit, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated.
You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and or subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, going into June, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Sydney Ansley and Patrick Weaver. You will remember the Great Greening, which started just outside of Jean, Nevada, has spread south and west in California and down into Mexico, along the coast, filling the countryside with brilliant wildflowers. It spread north into Canada, littering the Great Plains with native grasses and flowering shrubs, and all the way east until it just one day stopped almost directly in line with I-75. It just paused, and it stayed that way for a long time. Soon that divide, that sort of dividing line of the green and the past and the present, became known as the Great Green Divide. On one side, on the more eastern side, you could see what the land was. On the other side, you could see what the land had become, and it stayed that way. But for a long time. But over time, you could see the Great Greening started to degrade. You could see the divide recede. You could see the grasses and wildflowers turn brown and die. It wasn't a great green gift or a verdant, do-over. It was a mirror. And in it, the cyclists and everyone else could see themselves, ourselves. A few new preserves were built to try and keep the Great Greening alive, but ultimately the Great Greening was largely forgotten. Lost to the algorithm in favor of whatever was next. The end. Sad end. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you Monday, sorta, which will make sense then.